So today we are going to unpack why some firms stay busy but they do not scale and how culture get tested under pressure.
I think my first leadership moment is if you see a place you want to go, raise your hand, use your voice. I'm smiling because we do this all the time in staffing. You take a
Yeah.
recruiter, you take a salesperson, they are phenomenal, and then we reward them. The outcomes for the company deteriorate because that big person who was so good at growing the business isn't there anymore. As a culture, we go into scarcity. And yes, it's true. Numbers are going to go down. That's just a fact.
They are taking decisions based on the dashboard.
So when you simply look at the data is telling a one-dimensional story. What's underneath that data that you're seeing? That's a really tricky scenario. I find that when I can see someone as human and see what they're about, I'm able to find some kind of common ground.
So focus on being a company who is able to solve the business problem rather than just filling a rec.
Pressure is never going to go away. It's how we lead under the pressure.
Welcome to the Staffing Truth, real conversation on leadership, growth, and what truly shaping the future of the staffing industry. I'm your host, Rahul Karan Sharma, and today's guest brings a perspective that goes far beyond staffing firm. Kim Kelly is a global executive leader who has advised Fortune 500 companies and led multi-country global teams across industries, retail, aviation, life sciences, technology, and services. She has spent her career leading through complexities, scaling operation, and driving customer success while helping organizations grow under pressure. What makes this conversation truly valuable is that Kim's experience does not focus on resilience or leadership from theory. She lived it while leading teams at global scale. So today we are going to unpack what staffing leaders can learn from high performance organization, why some firms stay busy but they do not scale, and how culture get tested under pressure. So Kim, welcome to the Staffing Truth. Great to have you here. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I am doing great. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. So Kim, to start with, I would want you to share your leadership journey that has shaped how you think building and leading high performance teams today.
That's a lot to talk about. I will take one piece at a time. So I come through staffing very honestly. I started as an IT recruiter, so I get what it means to be at a desk. The desk has changed a lot. I will admit that there were fax machines when I started, and that is how recruitment was done with faxing
Yeah.
resumes. But the basics of being at a desk and being responsible for connecting the right person with the right job to solve a problem for a great company is where I started. And I
Mhm.
quickly learned that I loved that work, but I was really excited about the opportunity of shaping client experiences. So I sought out opportunities for becoming an account manager rather quickly in my tenure as a recruiter. And while people said there were certain procedures and protocols that had to go through before I could become an account manager, I still made my statement. And then because I raised my hand, I was given an account manager opportunity much earlier than people usually are. So I think my first leadership moment is if you see a place you want to go, raise your hand, use your voice. It doesn't mean you're going to
Mhm.
necessarily get exactly what you're
Mhm.
asking for, but then people know that you have a point of view and you have places to go. And so in that first moment, I then had the opportunity to continue to grow from being a regional account manager to a United States national account manager. And then I had an opportunity to go into global account management. And what was really interesting about that experience is that I learned that leadership is not only when someone reports to you in an HR system where you are responsible for completing annual reviews and approving time off. Leadership happens when you're given an opportunity or you take an opportunity to grow something from what it was to what it could be. And so in
Mm,
my global account opportunity, I had this really awesome platform where I could put together strategic account plans for global technology firms and work with countries all over the world for the company that I was working with. And none of these people reported to me. So it was
mm,
my responsibility as a leader of a strategy to work with them and understand how this strategy was going to benefit their day to day work. And so that's the
mm,
second leadership moment that I had, where I learned that if you can be really clear about your strategy and the value it can bring to others, you can create leadership influence regardless of what an HR system says. In fact,
mm.
I would make the argument in the way that our world is set up now and how many different functions in an organization have to be part of a decision that being able to have that matrix understanding will make you more successful than just getting really good in your own function.
I think in your this first response, you have dropped multiple golden nuggets, Kim. And the way I am taking away one of the aspect here is that your managers or your leaders, they are not mind readers. So unless and until you raise your hand, you tell them what path you are looking for, it will be really challenging for them to give you till the time there is an appropriate opportunity. And that might take longer. But if you share with them that this is what you want to do and this is what path you want to take, things would be coming sooner than later. And the second aspect that Kim was talking about, which I see very often in corporate world, that once you become a leader, you are so much swamped in your admin activities, which is your doing your happy hours or doing your time offs, or as you mentioned about the performance appraisal, that we forget the development aspect of that person. And you rightly mentioned that leadership is just not about taking care of that admin aspect, but also about growing, how you grow from where it was to where it could be. That's what leadership. And Kim, when you were talking about your moving up to account manager role, what I have noticed that many successful high performers, individual contributors, they move into that leadership role, but sometimes they are not able to make an impact the way the leaders are expecting or the way the organizations are expecting. So from your perspective, what are the potential things that goes wrong when a high performer is promoted to a leadership role? Why they are not able to succeed the way they should have?
I'm smiling because we do this all the time in staffing. And it
Mhm.
happens in any sales organization. You take a
Yeah.
recruiter, you take a salesperson, they are phenomenal. They're creating new logos, they're bringing in new opportunities. And then we reward them by asking them to stop doing the thing they're really, really good at and now manage other people to get them to
Mhm.
the same level of performance. And it's not that that very successful recruiter or salesperson has done anything wrong necessarily. Everybody's not built to be a manager. And there is
Mm.
nothing wrong with that. We need people who are exceptional at growing business through finding the best talent and growing business through finding the best company match for the company that you work for. And so the mistake that we as an industry make and other industries make is that we reward growth success by saying, now we're going to give you this manager role. And oftentimes, then that manager goes through a process of either not being great at what they're doing, also not being able to sell. And then the outcomes for the company deteriorate because that big person who was so good at growing the business isn't there anymore. And yes, there are circumstances where we can take someone who is exceptional as a recruiter or a salesperson and put them into that management role. And we can give them tools to make them a successful manager. We're not always good at doing that as an industry, but we can
Mm.
do that. And if that individual wants to learn that, they can be successful. But I think the thing that we need to do first is really go back and, like I was sharing in that very first example, what is it that that person wants? What is motivating them?
Mhm.
Do they want to continue to grow their career through a management and leadership track? It's not for everybody.
I think very well said that it's not for everybody. But the unfortunate part, Kim, is that the individuals, they think their growth is based on the titles or hierarchy. And I think that's the mindset that needs to be developed in when you hire new people and show them the career path, show them the growth. Because if they don't see what are the different options for them to grow, it becomes really challenging, and they see their colleagues getting promoted. The colleagues, they don't see difference in them. The manager sees the difference, that okay, this person is a great mentor, or this person is a good motivator, and those are the aspects that they look for being into the leadership role. But as a recruiter or as an individual contributor, we think that okay, everyone is same. We don't see that the brighter aspect in that individual. So I think the mistake that we are making as the leaders, as you rightly mentioned, is moving up. The moment a high performer reaches their target, we move them up, and we ask them to do things that they are not good at. So definitely they will see that challenge. They will see that things not working out for them. Now, in your experience, when the organization is slowing down, they see that numbers are shrinking, they see the growth is not coming. What actually have you found the true root cause of that slowness in growth? Has there been any common thing that you found based on your experience working with multiple industries, multiple leaders, the root cause of slowness in the growth?
I'm going to answer your question, but I want to go one moment back to what we just talked about. I want to share one thought that I think leads into this. When we were
Sure.
talking about how people getting promoted within the organization, that it's our responsibility as leaders in an organization to share with new hires or people what the trajectories can look like. I think that's true. I also think that everything starts from a cultural setup, and the culture is always set from the top. So if the messages that our teams are hearing is that we only find value in people in a hierarchy, no matter what is told to them within their structure, this is what they're going to hear, is that hierarchy matters, or if that's what they see. Because the other thing that sometimes happens within cultures is that we say one thing from an executive level with culture and we do another thing. And it's not out of malice and it's not out of wanting to create chaos. It's a human reaction to fear and anxiety. So,
Mm.
with that, then going to this next topic of when numbers go down and revenue goes down, what is the systemic piece within that? And I was talking with a good friend of mine who I worked with for, 20 years, I feel like. It feels like forever. 20 years is forever at some point. We both grew up in staffing together. And when I was going through some transition time, I was talking with this individual about how the good news is that because I grew up in staffing, I know there's always somebody who can buy. I just have to find them. So even when the economy is down, there's incredible dynamics globally, there's climate, there's so many things. Amy Webb talks about the convergence from a futuristic standpoint of what's taking place. Even with that, there are still opportunities. The piece that happens is that as a culture, we go into scarcity. We go into what we're not getting. And yes, it's true. Numbers are going to go down. Sometimes buying slows down or stops. That's just a fact. And you can't pretend that doesn't happen.
Mm.
However, as leaders, it becomes our responsibility to say, okay, what is possible? so that we're bringing the message to our middle management group. Middle management is the hardest job in any staffing company, and into our desk level recruiters and salespeople of, okay, we're going down. This is happening. But what is possible? What else can we do? What we often do is, why aren't we hitting this number? What's happening? And we don't talk about the, well, what can happen? We still have to acknowledge that there's a decrease. This is a for-profit organization. Most of the companies, I don't know any not-for-profit organizations. I'm sure there is one. So we do need to go and hit our deliverables and hit those numbers. But let's acknowledge that it's usually not because of a desk level problem. It starts within the leadership organization of what we're bringing down to the desk level.
Wow, I think you're bringing an amazing point here around the culture. And I think in my experience, I have seen that what we want to create as a culture and what actually gets developed, it's completely different. And sometimes the culture remains in those your walls. Culture remains on your website. So my follow-up question on culture, Kim, is many leaders, they talk about culture being a very important aspect of their company. How can an employer, how can a leader do a culture assessment without hiring a consulting company to do the culture assessment, that what, why and how the culture is real? Or is the culture is only evaluated when everything is going well? So, from your experience, how we can evaluate the real culture of an organization?
I will give you an example of something that I was a part of during my account management phase of my journey. So this is at the point of my leading journey where I was leading through influence and developing strategies that I had to demonstrate value with to other people. And we had identified as an overall team, it wasn't just the leaders that were responsible for the team, the overall team, that there were some systemic cultural problems within this organization. And this was probably a 40-person organization. And what was done is that a trusted member of the team was assigned to go forward and have interviews with each team member. And there were a series of questions that had been developed. They were developed by that identified resource along with the leaders of the organization, the account management organization, to say, okay, these are the three things that we're seeing that are problems. And I will be honest, Rahul, I do not remember what the three questions were, but they were of the themes of autonomy, being able to make decisions, understanding different processes within the organization, those kinds of things. But it's whatever
Mhm.
is important to your organization. And then those pieces of data were collected, they were anonymized, and then they were delivered back to the whole group to say,
Mm.
this is what we're really saying. Based on these things, how do we want to solve for it? Now, that's a very labor intensive way of doing it. And now we have all of these really good surveys that exist about employee engagement. But what I do think is special about that one is that when you're actually sitting across the table or on video with a colleague, and that person, you've been identified as a trusted person, asks you really what's going on, you're going to get richer data.
Mm.
And so I think that is something that might be interesting to consider in a part of your culture that you might be having a stickier situation with. From a scalable standpoint, engaging in some of those really well versed career employee engagement systems, I think I found great value in those and going through them and reviewing them with my teams. But it doesn't matter what you do from a data gathering standpoint. If you as a leader don't then take action on the things you promised to take action on, it just goes into the bucket of noise. And you've
Mm.
actually then created more problems for your culture than help.
Yeah, I think very well said. When we take inputs from employees and if we don't act on it, that becomes a trust deficit. And when you see that trust deficit, you will see the decline in performance, you will see increase in attrition. All those things will start happening, and you will not realize that, okay, this is happening because of that trust deficit. So I have seen in my experience, specifically in our leadership development programs, after every program, we used to come together and identify the action items for the group. And 3 months later, everything is going in a different direction because their leaders, they are not worried about what action they will be taking. They're only worried about the numbers. So when they are having a conversation with what I mean is leaders with their teams, they're only talking about numbers. They're not talking about their development. They're not talking about how they are taking care of their own mental health, how they're taking care of their team members' mental health. It's everything is around numbers. And I think Kim, in staffing, we executives, we look at the dashboard and the decisions are taken based on the dashboard. The client that you have worked with, and if you have observed this, that they are taking decisions based on the dashboard, what has been your conversation with them? Is this something that you allow them to continue, or you give them some different thoughts on whether taking decision based on the dashboard is the right one, or there are some other ways?
When you're brought into a client environment, it's really important to understand where our job is to push and where our job is to execute. And what I mean by that is there are times that scenarios happen with a client where I would coach my teams to come up with alternatives for the client, help them see another way, see if we can get them to a greater path that's going to be better value for what it is they need to do. And then sometimes we just need to execute on what it is. Whenever we execute, the thing that's interesting about data is you can make data say anything you want. You can find a set of data to prove any point you want to prove. So the important part when you set up, when one sets up these dashboards where we look at things, it's the so what, now what part of the dashboard that really has to be reviewed. And so when you simply look at the data is telling a one-dimensional story. What's underneath that data that you're seeing? If there are 300 candidates to one role and there's been 5 fills because every fill is a backfill and a backfill and a backfill, there might be a quality issue, but there might also be something going on once that candidate gets the offer and shows up to work that has to be investigated. And that's why if we don't do the double click into the data to see what's driving the data, we're making decisions based on very flat, black and white thinking. And my experience has showed me with clients that when there's a black and white thinking, it's usually because there is some type of concern the client is trying to avoid, usually getting in trouble with somebody. And then it becomes my responsibility as a leader to say, is there another way to help this client solve this problem?
Wow. And the point that you're bringing up around investigating at the client end, sometimes, specifically in the contingency staffing, Kim, we are being restricted to get engaged at the client location. But I think what I'm learning from you is when you are seeing a repeat, people are moving or probably more multiple backfills, that too in a shorter period of time, would not be a bad idea to have a conversation with that manager as well as with that team to really understand what's going on. Otherwise, we will keep on sending candidates and they will keep on quitting because of the environment that they are working in. I think that's a big golden nugget because sometimes we just try to see things internally. We do not see that could be an issue at the client end as well. That's a great point. Now, Kim, for an entrepreneur of $50 million staffing companies, if he or she is listening to us and they are stuck from a growth perspective, what would be your few action items for them that they should do to really scale their operations, really do much better when it comes to the revenue stream?
The answer I'm going to give might be unpopular, but I'm going to give it anyway.
Sure.
Anytime there's a problem with the business, I have to look internally first. You have to look
Mm,
internally first. You have to go, all right, what am I doing or not doing? Am I aware of how I'm showing up, how I'm leading, how the teams are responding to me? Do they understand the mission? Do they feel that there's a culture? Do they appreciate the work that needs to be done? Is there something that I need to do differently? That's the
mm,
first part. The second part then is let's assume you've done the first part. Let's assume you've taken a look at yourself. You've taken a look at yourself. The next part is have I provided as a leader the kind of stabilization for leadership, all the pieces we talked about earlier on in the conversation around, are these people who have been with me since day one and they have so much passion for what we're doing and I can trust them and they've helped me to grow the business, but maybe they're not in the right seat anymore. Maybe the business has gotten bigger than what their skills are. Maybe they need some of that coaching and leadership development in order to go to the next place. If you start with your people and you get your people in the right places and you treat your people well, your business is going to grow. There's all these other things we could talk about around processes and operations and all that. And that is all valid, but it's the foundation first of, are people being able to lead under the new organization in the way it's meant to be?
And I think this is the piece where many of us struggle because we look more from an outside in approach rather than inside out approach. And what folks Kim is talking about is, look at your people. Are your people being developed? Are your people growing? Because if your people are growing, that is a direct proportional to your team's growth, to your organization's growth. And I wanted to share one example dealing with a client, staffing client. And the challenge the client mentioned is that they are stuck from a revenue perspective. And I said that before I do anything, I need to do a dive in and have a conversation with your team. And when I was talking one on one with the team, I learned that, as you earlier you were mentioning about the middle management, the layer who is between the recruiters and the executive was the problem. And that person was creating challenges, issues, not supporting and not being helpful. And because of which there was demotivation, there was the culture was missing. And that has something to do with their growth, their organization growth. So I think what Kim is bringing an amazing point here is, look inside, not just inside you. Well, definitely you as a leader, you need to look inside you, but then inside your teams, do their skill assessments. When was the last time they were sent for a leadership development program? Another thing I've seen worked well is the third party coach. I've seen that sometimes those coaches gives people a perspective that probably their internal leaders are not able to give them. So try to focus on those aspects and I'm sure things will turn around your way. Now, on the other hand, there another experience I have, Kim, is that most of the staffing companies, they focus primarily on speed and growth, and which is not wrong. But then, in your experience, when companies focus on speed and growth, what are some of the things that they must be sacrificing towards the growth? Has there been any experience of from you, from your client, what they would be missing when they're just focusing on speed and growth?
Yeah. So I had a client in technology space where we went from one country, less than 50 recruiters and team members, to 20 countries, 500, 600 recruiters. It's a huge growth. And it was done within an 18-month period. And there were moments when we had to say, are we, first of all, when you grow to that perspective, you have to hire a lot of recruiters to then do the work for the client. Are you always able to hire the best quality recruiters? Would you have hired those recruiters if you were growing slowly, incrementally? The quality problem there. And then there's also the quality of their training, because it's not happening to the same level and detail. And then if they're not trained, first of all, you hired someone that maybe you wouldn't have hired previously. You've now trained them not as well as you usually would. And you're then asking them to go deliver the same exceptional product the client has been expecting. It works for a little while, but eventually you've built this enormous infrastructure on some sand. And then afterwards, you're going in and trying to put the foundation underneath the sand, and it takes twice as long. And you've got people that get burned out, and you have clients that you're constantly managing. And the piece that goes with that is, in an ideal world, you're going to be able to take time, because when you take time, you make better decisions. However, we live on planet Earth, which is not an ideal place. And sometimes you have to grow quickly and at pace. And my lesson from that then has been, whenever I've gotten into that situation again, I'm always really clear about, we're doing this, which means we are going to have to plan to invest additional money at the 6 month mark to fix the things that we just did. Are we prepared to do that? It's not bad, right? Like when you've got a client that's growing or you have opportunities, who's going to say no to opportunities? I mean, I don't think any of us got into this because we like to just hang out and wait for things to come our way. It's just that you're going to have to invest the money at some point. You're going to have to deal with quality, be prepared for escalations. If you can manage that, which you can,
Yeah.
but it's going to be noisy. And then the other part too is your culture can sometimes take a bit of a dip
Yeah.
because you just put a lot of pressure on your teams. And how do you
Yeah.
solve for that too?
Correct. No, I think very well said. And I think that also leads to some attrition as well. I think leaders in our industry take pride in high attrition, and the response I normally get, hey, that's the norm of the industry, 40 to 50% attrition. Who has created this norm? This norm has been created by people in the industry. But the cost of people moving from a company is sometimes not visible on the balance sheet, and you don't see that cost. The retraining cost, the rehiring cost, it's not visible. So you just keep on hiring, and then people are quitting. So you just refill those positions. I think the learning that I'm having from you, Kim, in this context is we need to focus more like a bamboo tree where farmers spend almost 3 to 5 years to nurture. Now, I'm not saying that we need to spend 3 to 5 years, but the example that I'm giving is you spend more time in foundation, nurturing the roots, and then once it is prepared, within 6 weeks, that bamboo tree goes to 90 feet. So I think as leaders, we need to spend more time in building the foundation of the organization rather than just going with the speed of hiring because that could be detrimental.
Love your bamboo metaphor because not
Mhm.
only after you put that time in does it grow really tall, once it's centered and grows tall, it spreads. So like if
Yes.
you like it like goes into everything. So if you take the time to invest, it's gonna expand for you. I'm using that every
Yeah, and I think that's where the legacy comes in, right? So if you invest well on people, they see that, okay, my company is taking care for me. That's where they will share that knowledge. And that's where you build the culture that you want to create rather than just putting some big buzzwords behind the walls or on your website. That might not work your way. Now, also, a lot of buzzword is going around our industry, Kim, on the AI aspects. And I'm listening to many podcasts as well as reading to many articles that AI will take over the recruiting industry, staffing industry. So, what has been your take? Will AI amplify strong leadership and operations or just expose the one who are a little weak in that area?
I do think that AI is going to take everything that is repeatable and less creative or not creative at all and will automate all of those processes. In fact, we would benefit from that so we can unlock more creativity because what I've seen happen in our industry, and I'm sure you have too, is as there has been more technology available to us, we've become less curious and we've actually defaulted to what it is the technology says for us to do next. So I see it that this will become an opportunity for us to elevate how we curate, think, are inquisitive. I do think that some jobs that exist today in recruitment are not going to exist. There are going to be people who will need to find something new to do. It doesn't mean there's not going to be a job, though. There was a time that one of the jobs was putting the cap on a tube of toothpaste. We don't need that job anymore. But people still went to work. So the skills that are so critical, if you're listening to this, these are the skills: curiosity, communication, curation. Those are the skills to really be honing so that you can continue to elevate within the organization and within the industry.
Wow, I think very well put because yes, AI will help us. AI will speed up what we are doing, but there are always will be need of people who are curious, people who are compassionate, people who really will build relationship because we are into relationship based business, and that's where one aspect, the empathy aspect, is missing from the tool. I was listening to this Google's ad where they were able to reserve a booking for a hair salon for one of the person. And the way the AI voice was talking was also showing some of the empathy aspect as well. But it was very evident that it's an AI voice. You can figure it out. But for our industry, I think a lot of people are using it for calling as well, specifically for that first call. I met with a couple of owners who are doing a lot in the sourcing space. They are claiming that what a recruiter is taking today to do 1 hour job probably could be done in under a minute. So definitely it will be in favor for the industry. But yes, it will also expose those people who are not growing as per the pace, as per the technological advancement that is happening. So we need to grow from that perspective as well. There are few questions, Kim. So what I do, one of the new things I've started doing with this podcast is I go to my network and ask them some of the questions that they would want to get answers from the leaders like you. So I have 3 questions that I would want to ask on their behalf. And the first one is, why the senior leaders take decisions without involving the ground level people? From your experience, your thoughts, and what they should do to really involve everyone.
Yeah. So I have two views on that. One, there's a reason we have people in leadership positions. We've entrusted them to make decisions for the organization. So there is that piece. The other piece is that when leaders can go in and identify some critical items from a focus group on how something could impact a situation, whether it's a change in protocol, a change in technology, ultimately what leaders are going to be doing then is getting better buy-in for the entire organization. That would be the goal to aspire to. I think that there are some companies that are doing that and doing that well, because they've learned that, especially when they've implemented technologies, the friction points, and they're not moving forward. But the part here where leaders are taking decisions without engaging the ground level, I think it goes to that thought process of, I've been empowered to make this decision. I'm going to make the decision. I have the best interests of the business at hand. I don't think it's malicious. I think it is single-sided.
So on that front, Kim, why you think, or maybe when is that the executive leader, they probably stop, not stop, but they create so much of distance with the ground level that they are not in regular touch? From your experience, when that happened and why that happened?
It's so interesting to get asked this question because this has just not been my experience as a leader. As a leader, I have always done skip levels. I've taken time to meet with recruiters on a regular basis. I take time to know my team and understand them. As my team's gotten bigger, it's been harder, and I haven't been able to get to know everybody at the same level I once did. But I still really sought out understanding what was happening because that made me a better leader. I think that it goes back to that part of leading under pressure. There are these leaders who are under pressure and they use pressure as an excuse to keep small and keep things close. There's a natural response. I was just talking with a client yesterday about the fact that there was concern if too much information got out to the ground level, got out to the desk level team members, the general employee base, that there would be a lot of noise and chaos that would take place. And what I was trying to share with this client was that you're going to have noise no matter what. Do you want to have noise that is transparent and is upfront about what's going on? Because we're never going to take a decision as a business that makes everybody happy. That's
Mm,
impossible.
yeah.
But we can be transparent or we can have noise because we didn't tell people anything and now they're surprised.
Wow. So, leaders, if you're listening, focus on doing that skip level meeting. That really will help you in staying connected with the ground level people. And the other thing is be more transparent, as Kim mentioned, because no matter what, whether you communicate or you do not communicate, noise is happening. So it's better if you communicate right on time, and that noise will be more transparent. They will see you as a more trusted leader rather than just another leader. So thank you, Kim, for sharing that input. The second question that I got from a network is, I am a successful recruiter working for 4 years in this organization. I have noticed that my super manager is biased for my manager. So whenever I am trying to make things work, or whenever I'm trying to share things which is not working for the team, those have been disregarded. From your perspective, what are my options? How I can really bring the true picture about my reporting manager to the leadership?
That's a really tricky scenario, and it's unfortunately more common than I think we'd like there to be. So, just to restate it, as a recruiter, you have a direct line manager, there's some challenges. You're concerned about going to your super manager because that super manager is really on the side of your manager. So, anything you bring, you feel like will just get dismissed. So, I have two thoughts about that. One, have you actually gone to your super manager? Have you tried? Or are you just assuming? Oftentimes, because in the moments that I have assumed something, I have missed opportunities.
Mm.
So if you haven't gone, I would encourage you to do so. You might be right. They might dismiss you, but at least then you know you've done your part.
Mm.
Let's say you have done that. When I've been in that situation or I've had people come to me and I've coached them through a situation like that, there's typically some senior leader, someone else at the super leader level that you can trust. Go to that person, seek out some guidance on organizational savviness of how to manage through this process. And I would encourage you in both of those two examples, lead with data and facts.
Mm.
Do not lead with emotion and feelings. I'm a big fan of emotion and feelings. I talk about feelings all the time. I believe we should have them. And I think they're an important part of what makes us great at our jobs. But when we need to make change, data, facts, and a third part, actually, long term value to the organization. That will move the needle.
All right. Thank you, Kim, for sharing that input. The last one is we are having friction between sales and recruiting team. What could be your inputs for us to take some immediate steps so that we can have an amicable relationship between sales and recruiting?
Tale as old as time, this one about the friction between these groups. Anytime this has happened for me, I find and I've been coached to do this because I've been the one who's like hit a wall and not been able to figure out how to make it work. And the coaching that I've gotten, which I have since shared with others after I learned this skill, is that act as if there is good intent in the actions. You might not believe it, doesn't matter. Act as if there's good intent. And then spend time getting to know that person as a human. You
Mm.
don't have to like everybody you work with, but you have to see. Let me rephrase that because you don't have to do anything. You can continue to do what you're doing and be miserable. That's a choice. I find that when I can see someone as human and see what they're about, I'm able to find some kind of common ground.
Wow. And I used to tell to my people is about know the people behind the laptop. Many a times we just know the name, the title, the location, that's it. And this is all about the investment. We need to invest in people, not just talking to them when you have work, but speak to them when it is not about work, just to do some small talk and get to know that person behind that name and or the laptop. So thank you, Kim, for giving that advice. Before we move to our rapid fire, I have two more questions for you, Kim. The first one is from your experience or from your vision, 3 years from now, which are the staffing firms specifically will survive and which will dominate?
Think that any staffing firms that are in the industry of healthcare, life sciences, things to make us live and last longer, you'll survive. You like if you're there, you'll survive. I think any that are really becoming AI first companies and taking some of the hard decisions of completely ripping apart the way they operate and putting it back together with AI first will survive. I think that the ones that will thrive also have to be AI first. That's just a given to be AI first.
Mhm.
But the ones that will thrive will be the ones that move from, do you have a rec? Let me fill a rec, to actually talking about how do we solve a business problem that you as a client be talking with them because that's the humanity part we were talking about before. What can we do differently? AI at some point might be able to do this, but they can't yet. be able to sit there and really talk through the options and curiously understand what it is that a client needs to do. Because when they come and they say, "Hey, I have a wreck," they don't just have a wreck. They have some other business problem they're trying to solve. Get to know that. You'll understand their organization better and you'll likely uncover additional business. Those are going to be the ones that thrive.
Wow. So focus on being a company who is able to solve the business problem rather than just filling a rack if you really want to thrive. So look at your organization and check whether you are just filling a requirement or you are actually solving the problem of the client. If you want to dominate, focus on solving the problem. With that said, Kim, I would want our listeners to know about how you are helping your clients in making them successful. So, if our listeners want to learn more about your work, more about engaging with you, share with us how they can connect with you and what kind of tangible outcome they get when they connect with you, when they work with you.
Great. Of course. So I have recently launched a company. I'm the managing partner and founder of Aveni Consulting. And in that work, I work with leaders who are transitioning for the first time into executive roles, who have been within an organization that we talked about where they've grown up but haven't had that opportunity to truly be coached through strategic leadership. And I lead clients through pressure is never going to go away. It's how we lead under the pressure. And so clients work with me as a speaker, as an executive coach, and as a workshop facilitator. And I would love to share my Instagram and LinkedIn socials.
Sure.
And please connect with me and we can talk more.
All right. We will include Kim's details on our show notes. So get it on our show notes and probably connect with her on LinkedIn or Instagram or any platform of your choice. So now we are moving to this staffing truth round. It's a rapid fire round. 10 questions will be coming to you, Kim.
Ready.
And we just want you to give answer instantly. Okay.
Huh.
All right. One word to describe the staffing industry today.
Messy.
Speed or quality? What wins in the long term?
Quality.
Most overrated KPI in staffing.
Fill rate.
Top biller always makes a good leader. Agree or disagree?
Disagree.
One thing recruiters should stop doing immediately.
Hosting and praying.
Okay. AI, opportunity or threat?
Opportunity.
One trait that destroys leadership credibility.
Not telling the truth. Lying.
Sales driven or candidate driven? What actually works?
Candidate driven.
Now, this next question, I want to have you do your own introspection and share with us. What has been one mindset shift for you that really changed your career?
When I moved from a mindset of scarcity to abundance, once I realized that there is always enough, I just have to find it. And that has opened up everything for me.
Awesome. Now, I would like you to finish this sentence. The future of staffing belongs to leaders who.
Curious.
All right. Well, Tim, this was a very grounded and insightful conversation. I'm really thankful for you to share your inputs, share experience from your work with a global organization. And what I noticed that it was a very candid conversation. It was very transparent and open. That's what we want our leaders also to be when they're communicating with their employees. And I think a lot of staffing leaders listening today will walk away with reflection on not only how they scale, but also on how they can lead people through change. Leading under pressure is always challenging, and you can always choose a easy route. But if you choose the route which is right, you will see that you are making a difference. Focus on building the foundation of your people rather than just focusing on speed and growth, because in the long term, that foundation will survive. And for our listeners, if you are tuning in today, I would like you to share your comments, your biggest takeaway from the show today. Shower your love on Kim's experience, on Kim's wisdom. Connect with her on LinkedIn as well as Instagram, and keep listening and watching to us on The Staffing Truth. Until next time, take care and have a great rest of the day. Thank you again, Kim, for joining on The Staffing Truth. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rahul.